You said this movie was going to make $1 billion. So many people were writing in the comment section, you do not know what you're talking about. You're stupid. Monkey. Saying the N-word. What did I say? Nothing. I just let it be. But now all of the sudden, all of the fans are quiet. All of the James Gunn meat writers are quiet. I want to hear you guys talk right now. Because now is the time to actually go out to the theater and start supporting this movie so we can beat Man of Steel. Man of Steel did this 13 years ago. Imagine 13 years ago and you can't beat the guy. Like, you got a world tour. You have to think of this. The guy got a world tour to go to a bunch of different countries to promote this movie. Why? Because they saw the tracking already from the beginning. They looked at it, they were like, okay, we need you guys to go out and sell this movie. And mind you, we had Corn Sweat, Brosniak. This was like a Justice League movie. So many people in this movie. So many people promoting this movie. And Man of Steel, it was just Henry Cavill. All we had is a poster of Henry Cavill. But do you know how much these guys were putting it out there? Just imagine the marketing. I think they probably spent $200 million on just the marketing.
There's something that is bothering me about the narrative around the Superman movie.
Okay.
That I feel like I've been lied to about the film. I feel like everyone has been lied to, and I don't like this misrepresentation of what has actually gone on with this movie and its success, or perhaps lack thereof.
Guys, I think that something is happening when it comes to these box office numbers. I can't prove anything, but I think that they are boosting them slightly. Because if you look at, I guess, the American numbers, then they sold a lot. More than Batman vs. Superman, which is very interesting, I think. But it's just like, I think the studio has inflated some of the numbers. I can't prove it, of course, I can't. But if you look at Marvel's Fantastic Four, and then you look at Superman's numbers, they're practically the same. The only difference is that, I guess in America, a lot more people went to watch this movie, which I find laughable.
So let's just get right into it. Superman is releasing on digital to purchase this Friday, the Friday after this recording. Only 35 days after it was released in theaters. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculously close for this movie. And I've seen a lot of cope from people online about why Warner Brothers is doing this and trying to defend exactly why they would be doing this, because everyone understands that that basically means that Superman's run at the box office is done. When you release a movie on digital, that is completely kneecapping whatever legs it could have at the box office at the end. Which is why usually when they release it on digital, it means that they know that there's not going to be any more to be had at the box office. But let's get into it. I've been being told for weeks now, ever since Superman came out, that it is actually a success. A great start for this new DC universe, and that it made its money back, and that it is a great foundation for the future of the universe. James Gunn even recently lashed out at a person online who would dare question that this movie is not a success at the box office. They wouldn't be that foolish to release a film, the first film in a franchise.
Three things which I want to mention here. First thing, I think they're releasing it just because they want to make more money, because I think they have like a 50-50 split when it comes to, I guess, the theaters. They also make money from the movie. So the theaters got to get their cut and the studios got to get their cut. So that's what I believe is happening right now. They're thinking like, you know what? We need to make as much money as we can from this movie. So instead of having it in the theaters, we'll have it on streaming so we can make as much money as we can from this movie. Because I think They're not being really truthful with how much they invested in this movie. I think they invested way more than what they got back. They want to recoup as much money as they can. That's the first thing. The second thing, I think that it's very weird that James Gunn constantly has to protect this movie, because if I'm being honest, Zack Snyder never did anything like this. He just released his movie and then just let it be. And I remember when Man of Steel came out, so many people had a problem with that Superman killed Zod at the end. So many people. And I'm just like, okay, if you guys had such problems with that, why don't you have problems with that Superman in this movie was lasering so many people? Like killing so many people. But apparently when James Gunn does it, that's okay. But if Zack Snyder does a similar thing to what James Gunn is doing, then all hell breaks loose. Then the third thing, which I also want to talk about, is just that the reason why you need to protect something is because you are insecure about that thing. If somebody calls me fat, I'm not going to have an emotional reaction. The reason why is just because I'm not fat. So it's very telling to see how James Gunn is acting, because I think that the studio has been breathing down his neck about this Superman movie. And what I think is happening here is just that it underperformed and the studio is not happy with what James Gunn produced. And now they're like, okay, how do we fire James Gunn without firing him?
So after a bit of debate on exactly when Superman was going to come out on digital, with one thing saying that it would be the 26th, which is still pretty early. It's releasing this Friday, 35 days after its release in theaters. And ladies and gentlemen, that is less time. 10 days less time than the Batman's window. That had a 45-minute window from theaters to streaming, which they had announced as the film was coming out, which to this day, people think is the reason that the Batman might have been kneecapped at the box office. So, I mean, let's just bring up what releasing a film early on digital even means, because I saw the most ridiculous comment from the Canadian lad that said, I apologize, calling them out, but they said that, well, the reason why this is happening is that WB must be happy with what this movie has done at the box office. They're so satisfied with it and they're putting it on streaming.
What?
No, that is not why movies go to streaming and to digital early. You have to understand, the entire reason why movies released in theaters started to go on streaming and digital so early is because of studios panicking about recouping their losses on films. So they were scared during, say, 2021 that films released in theaters still weren't going to make a lot of money, and so they would release them day and date on streaming. That is what HBO Max especially was famous for doing, and which destroyed a lot of their relationships with talent. After that, there became this pattern where if you would put out a movie in the theater and it wouldn't do well, they would shove it on streaming. True. Why would they do this? Because, well, if a movie isn't going to make much at the box office, then put it on streaming as fast as possible so you can try to recoup your losses on that.
The exact same thing is happening to James Gunn, which happened to Zack Snyder as well. But the difference is that the studio now doesn't want to look like they've got egg on their face. So what they're doing is they're pretending like James Gunn is going to get to direct another Superman movie in the Superman cinematic universe. It's a Super Friends which is going to get to direct, but I think it's just their way of saying, we're going to push you to the side. We're going to see what your next project does, James Gunn. And if it doesn't perform, we're going to bring in Matt Reeves.
And the reason why this was controversial and why it was very negative for the industry is it devalued the theater experience. It told people, theater experience doesn't really matter. These movies are just going to be on digital a couple weeks later if you don't like the film enough to see it in the theater. And it completely messed up Hollywood's model of doing things, where originally they would soak up all the money that they could at the theaters, wait, get it out on physical and digital and soak up more money there. There was a pattern to it, and that's how they would make their money. And they started to devalue the theater experience to make it all digital. And so that actually kneecapped what these movies could do in the theaters, because they started to train people that this is just going to be on digital in a couple weeks. So what happened is studios have actually gradually moved away from that back to longer and longer windows from the theaters to digital. Even Disney, with all their bombs this year, has not rushed to get them out on streaming afterwards, probably because Disney has more money and they can handle it. But Warner Brothers does not have that luxury. They are massively in debt. Still, they have had a lot of successes at the theaters this year with Minecraft and Sinners, which got a long window between theaters and streaming. But Superman, and remember, even the Batman got a 45-day window, and people said that that was way too short and that might have kneecapped the film. Superman is going out on digital just 35 days, a month practically after it was released. Ladies and gentlemen, to respond to that comment about they must be satisfied with how it's done at the box office and they throw it on streaming, that never happens. When Barbie was coming out in theaters and making so much money, they didn't go, well, it's made $600 million at this point, we're fine with it, shove it on streaming. When Top Gun Maverick was doing so well in theaters, they didn't go, oh, well, we're good with 500 million, 700 million, let's get it out of theaters and put it on streaming. No, they never did that, because when movies are truly doing well at the theater and they truly have legs and are going to continue to make money, they leave them in there for as long as possible before taking them out and planning when they're going to come on streaming. That's what happens when a movie is truly successful. Movies go on streaming when they are unsuccessful, and when the studio needs to recuperate their losses. That is what happens.
I think there's a lot of politics which is occurring here when it comes to the reviews, because a lot of these shills do not really want to come out with the truth. And the truth is just that this movie is a flop. Before this movie came out, everybody was saying that it was going to make $1 billion. And if you guys just go back to some of the videos which I made, I said there's no way that this movie is going to make $1 billion. I just don't see it.
Superman would not be going on streaming this early in an era where they are fighting to get away from that, unless they needed more money out of it and they wanted that money now. There is no other explanation for why this is happening. And I don't care what James Gunn says about everyone behind the scenes doesn't understand how box office works, because James Gunn has fibbed a lot before. They would simply not be doing this unless they hadn't gotten enough money from it yet, knew that it wasn't going to make more money, because it already has fallen to like 6th place at the box office. There isn't much more to be made. And they're putting it on streaming because they want to recuperate those losses. Superman will not make more than Man of Steel, not even close. It might not even get to 600 million because of this. They definitely, and like, I don't know how much money this movie needed behind the scenes. I can tell you it's probably usually more than they tell you it is, like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of...
1000%. And I want you guys to get it in your head. This movie won't make more than Man of Steel. I don't care what you guys are talking about domestically. Overall, it's not gonna make more than Man of Steel. It isn't. It just isn't.